I started seeing him about 6 months after my grandfather died, and it messed with my head because he was always in the same chair, at the same table, in 3 different cities. The first time was in a tiny coffee shop in Seattle. I was slumped in a window booth trying to write an email when I looked up and saw an old man sitting alone at a small round table near the back. He had a beige trench coat draped over the seat next to him, and he was wearing a very distinctive, wide-brimmed gray fedora. He wasn't looking at anyone. He was just staring intently at a blank, open notebook placed on the table in front of him. It was the absolute stillness of him, the way he occupied the space, that first caught my attention. I dismissed it as writer's block or just a random eccentric. But 3 weeks later, I was on a work trip in San Diego, eating lunch alone at a bistro a mile from the ocean. I glanced up from my sandwich, and there he was. Same beige trench coat, same distinctive gray fedora, same round table, same intense, unblinking focus on a blank notebook. My fork actually clattered onto my plate. The coincidence was too jarring. I told myself it was an easily replicable look, a generic older gentleman's uniform. I even stood up and walked closer to the table, pretending to look at a menu board. As I passed, I tried to catch his eye or see what he was doing, but he didn't even twitch. It was like observing a perfectly composed photograph, only this photo was breathing. He was just waiting. The feeling of dread really set in a month after that. I was home in Denver, having a beer with friends at a neighborhood pub, and I had completely forgotten about the man. We were laughing about something stupid when I looked toward the quiet corner near the pool table. And there he was, trench coat, fedora, staring at the notebook. In that moment, the entire pub seemed to fall silent, and the low hum of conversation felt like a cover for a sound I couldn't hear. It wasn't just the clothes. It was the way his hands rested flat and motionless on the open pages, and the sheer, focused stillness that was physically identical across all 3 locations. I felt a cold surge of certainty. This wasn't coincidence. This was deliberate. My friend saw the color drain from my face and asked what was wrong. I pointed him out, stammering about the impossible recurrence, but they just saw an old guy drinking tea. I became obsessed, terrified of seeing him again, yet consumed by the need to know what he was doing. Weeks passed without a sighting, and I started to relax, figuring he was just a traveling eccentric I kept crossing paths with. Then I decided to clean out my grandfather's old filing cabinet, the one I'd been avoiding since he passed. I pulled out a stack of documents, financial records, and underneath everything, tucked into a manila envelope, was an old, faded photograph. It was a picture of my grandfather maybe 50 years ago, sitting at a small, round table in what looked like a library or cafe. He was young, laughing, and vibrant. But standing in the deep background, just out of focus, was a man in a beige trench coat and a wide-brimmed fedora, sitting at a small table, staring intently down at a notebook. My whole body went numb. I ran to the nearest wall mirror, my breath catching in my throat, and stared at my own reflection. I looked back at the photo, then back at the reflection. The man in the picture wasn't just like the man I'd seen. He was perfectly and possibly the same, and the horrifying twist wasn't seeing him in the past. It was what happened when I looked back at the photograph one last time before dropping it. In the old picture, the man in the trench coat near the back was no longer staring down at the notebook. His head hadn't moved, but his face, that terrifying, still, patient face, was staring directly out of the picture frame, looking straight at me with the same expectant, unblinking intensity he had in all those coffee shops. He wasn't waiting for something in the notebook. He was waiting for me to open that drawer. And to this day, I can't shake the feeling that he's not following me through space, but through time, and that the only thing he's recording in that blank book is the moment he finally has to stop waiting.